and welcome to another episode of Jofo in the Ring. I'm Kyle Morin, and if you're wondering where Frank Jofo is, he's on a boat. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's just me today, but we are doing something special. We are doing my top favorite 5 managers of all time. So why waste time? Let's just get right into it. Number 5. If you grew up in the 80s, early 90s, chances are, if you were watching a good guy, if you're watching Hulk Hogan fight anybody, it was this guy, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. And if you're saying to yourself, Kyle, what are you smoking? He was a wrestler. He was. You're right. He was. However, he did become a manager later on in his career. He, due to an injury to, I believe it was his back, he hurt 2 discs or whatever. So when he came back as a manager, he decided to start buying up some contracts, and he was managing a fucking who's who of WWF superstars, wrestlers. We're gonna knock down the list. We have, as always, IRS, former tag team partner, the Beast from the East, Bam Bam Bigelow, Nikolai Volkov, WWF legend right there, Kama. If you don't know who Kama is, Google The Godfather. Pimpin' ain't easy. What can you do? King Kong Bundy, Psycho Sid, 1-2-3 Kid, and Tatanka. That's right. All part of his $1 Million corporation. And if you're like, that's kind of a shitty, bunch of shitty names right there. Well, 1995, WrestleMania 11, that group took 2 of the prestigious spots at WrestleMania. They got the main event, and they got the Undertaker match. Mind you, back then, this was when the Undertaker was just fighting your monster of the week. It was King Kong Bundy versus The Undertaker. Spoiler alert, Undertaker won. They also got the main event where Bam Bam Bigelow took on Lawrence Taylor in the main event. And they had the $1 Million Corporation on one side of the ring, and Lawrence Taylor had some NFL pros on their side of the ring. Lawrence Taylor ended up winning by a shitty bulldog off the top rope. The next night on Raw, Bam Bam Bigelow got fired from the corporation. But all under the tutelage of the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. And that's why he is my 5th favorite manager of all time. Number 4.
This is Jimmy Hart, the mouth of the South. Where is
the
she?
Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. That's right. Now, if you grew up watching wrestling, you always heard this annoying little fucking voice off to the side through a megaphone. That was Jimmy Hart. This annoying little bastard just went through a who's who of champions. He managed, we're going to go to the list here. Let's just say off the top of my head, the Fabulous Rougeaus, the Hart Foundation, Money Inc., we just mentioned DiBiase before, all tag team champions, the Natural Disasters, and then later on, Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, the Mega Maniacs, which coincidentally ended up being a tag team match at WrestleMania 9 versus Money Inc., which they won by disqualification, so fuck you. Now, Jimmy Hart also managed Jerry the King Lawler when he first came in. And then he turned on Jerry Lawler, and he decided to manage, are you ready? Andy Kaufman. In one of the biggest storylines in wrestling history, way back in the olden days. It was very, very famous. They had this whole big thing on David Letterman where Lawler smacked Kaufman across the face on live TV, and nobody knew if it was real or not. Well, the Mouth of the South was there. And number 3. That's right, Mr. Jim Cornette. In the early 90s, this guy and his fucking tennis racket were all over the place. He was a manager, a ring announcer, multiple hats across multiple wrestling federations. We're going to talk about his WWF tenure because that's mainly what I watched when I was a kid. So this guy, if you remember Yokozuna, that was one of the Camp Cornette people, along with the legendary Mantar. That's right, everybody. Mantar. The icon of the World Wrestling Federation. The top fucking first ballot Hall of Famer Mantar, ladies and gentlemen. I'm fucking with you. Yeah, he was there, but he sucked. We got Big Van Vader, the man. We have the late legendary Owen Hart. And, of course, the British Bulldog. Who didn't Cornette hit with his fucking racket? Am I right? This guy was all over the place between That and doing Smoky Mountain Wrestling, where he would eventually bring in the new Midnight Express, and they were Bart Gunn and Bob Holly. They didn't last for too long, obviously, but I just want you to picture Bob Holly blonde with a mullet, and that was the new Midnight Express. It was awful. But that was the 90s. It was hit or miss. You had to throw some shit at the wall and see what would stick. Am I right? And that is wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, for those of you who are wrestling fans now, you know as Cornette is the guy who insulted Becky Lynch after her pregnancy announcement. But we're not going to hold that against him. The guy's a legend. And don't ever let him near an open microphone. And number 2, ladies and gentlemen, his name is Paul Heyman. And he was the advocate for not just Brock Lesnar. We're going to go way back here, early WCW days, to when he was known as Paul E. Dangerous, and he ran the Dangerous Alliance. Now, if you don't know who that is, then get yourself on the WWE Network for $9.99 and do yourself a favor and watch this, because this group is a literal who's who of legends. Like, right off the bat, we have Ravishing Rick Rude. Yeah, exactly. The best mustache in the business. We have Arn Anderson, Double A, the Enforcer, a fucking horseman. He managed a horseman. That's right. We have beautiful Bobby Eaton, kind of an unknown, but if you're a diehard wrestling fan, you know who he was. He was always on WCW. He was kind of a jobber towards the end of his career, but still a fucking ring technician. The living legend, Larry Zbyszko. Again, for you older fans, you probably recognize him as one of the voices on Nitro. To the end of his career, he was a bit of an announcer. He was also the guy who defeated Bruno Sammartino as well. So, right there, living legend. We have also Medusa, formerly known as Alundra Blaze. You might recognize her from dumping the women's championship in the trash on Nitro as well. And last but definitely not least, a gentleman, a kind of an unknown. An unknown if you don't know wrestling, Mr. Stunning Steve Austin, who would later on go on to be known as the Ringmaster. And on top of that, when he moved from WCW and eventually took over ECW, and, well, I don't want to use the term ran that into the ground, but, he then moved over to the WWF and did some announcing from there, and also managed another unknown. I don't know if guys have ever heard of Brock Lesnar, him. Yeah, he was around for a cup of coffee, but then nobody ever heard from him again. And also the voice of the voiceless, CM Punk. So right there, Paul Heyman, he's my number 2. Probably your number 2 on your list as well. Absolute legend. He's a great talker. There's not many wrestlers who can go one-on-one with Paul Heyman on the mic. And that's what makes a great manager, is you have to be there, you have to be a good talker, like basically just support your guy. And if you've ever watched Paul Heyman in the corner, you've heard him, you've seen him, all around legend. My number 1 pick of the greatest manager of all time, Lana. That's right, the ravishing Russian. She's done wonders for the careers of Rusev and Bobby. No, I'm kidding. That's fucking stupid. She's an idiot and needs to get fired. My number 1, the greatest manager of all time, Bobby the Brain Heenan. That's right, the Weasel. Now, what can you say about Bobby Heenan that hasn't been said already? He's a legend. He's probably the best mind in the business, the greatest manager of all time. He was also a wrestler for a short spell. If you want a fun match to Google of him, was him and the Ultimate Warrior in a Weasel match, in the Weasel suit match. Or he took some decent bumps from the Warrior, because we all know what a fucking ring technician he was. Old Johnny Safety, they used to call the Warrior. No, they never called him that. But Bobby the Brain Heenan, if you grew up in the 80s, chances are this guy was the manager of whatever bad guy you were watching on TV. Like I said before, a literal who's who of people. Andre the Giant, the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, Ravishing Rick Rude, Greg the Hammer Valentine. The list goes on and on and on. And after his managing was done, after he was done with the Heenan family, he went on to become one of the best announcers you've ever heard. And he was still a heel. Still a heel manager. Go back and watch the 1992 Royal Rumble and listen to him just make Ric Flair sound even bigger than he already was. This man was fantastic, and there's not much more I can say about it except for he's a fucking legend. So, and there you have it. My top 5 favorite managers of all time. If I left anybody out, leave something in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. Click the little bell on the YouTube page. Follow us. Get us. We're on everything: Twitter, Instagram, fucking carrier pigeon. We're bringing MySpace back. We're getting everything. We even created a high five page for all you 40 somethings out there. So, and that's our list.